If you look just at the Horn of Africa crisis of 2011, 260,000 lives were lost during that crisis. What we want at all costs is to avoid a repeat of that kind of cataclysmic loss of life. It is, to come back to my point, what has to happen now is that funding has to come in so that the humanitarian effort can try its best to do something about this situation, but already it is very late.
The United Nations is warning that the risk of mass starvation in parts of Africa is rising rapidly. An estimated 20 million people are living in areas where harvests have failed, which means malnutrition rates are increasing. In South Sudan alone, 1 million people are on the brink of starvation, and the United Nations had appealed for $4.4 billion in aid. But to date, it's only received about 21% of that amount. And so the world body is now calling for more funds to be released to alleviate the crisis. So what factors have led Africa to this point? And what kind of action can be taken in the fight against Africa's famine? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, drought and ongoing conflict have plunged East Africa into the worst food security crisis Africa has faced in 20 years. Earlier this year, UNICEF projected that 944,000 children would be acutely malnourished in 2017. And according to the United Nations, more than half of Somalia's population are in need of humanitarian assistance. United Nations officials have been assessing the scale of the food crisis on the ground in Somalia and northeastern Nigeria. CGTN's Clementine Logan has more.
Baidoa, some 150,000 people here have been displaced due to drought. But the scale of Somalia's food crisis is far greater. Over 6 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance. United Nations officials were on the ground this week to assess the impact in Southwest and Jubaland states, both on the brink of famine.
Talked about how we can work together towards fighting the drought and to prevent a famine from happening, so to make sure that people get the type of assistance that they deserve. So we need that cooperation to work together towards fighting the drought and the famine and the acute water diarrhea and cholera situation.
The delegation also met with internally displaced people and patients being treated for various drought-related illnesses. On the other side of the continent, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has appealed for urgent support to address the hunger crisis engulfing the Lake Chad Basin. Around 7 million people in the region face severe hunger. In northeast Nigeria alone, some 50,000 people are edging closer to famine.
This is not only a humanitarian crisis, it is also an ecological crisis that can affect the livelihood of these people for the future. We need to take action. The combination of food assistance and food production support. This is the only way that we foresee that we can avoid the situation to complicate more and more.
The crisis is a combination of repeated droughts and conflict as government forces battle Boko Haram Islamist insurgents. The FAO wants to begin distributing seeds, animal feed and cash transfers to help displaced farmers and voluntary returnees replenish their food stocks. But there's a huge shortfall in international assistance. So far, the FAO has received less than a quarter of the $62 million it requested for its humanitarian response plan in Nigeria. Clementine Logan, CGTN.
And now to help explain the extent of the crisis and what can be done, I have expert guests standing by in Kampala. Alhaji Jallo, he's the representative for the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations in Uganda. And in Mogadishu, Abdi Ahmed Mohammed, a member of the National Drought Response Committee. Thank you both for joining in the conversation. Abdi Ahmed Mohammed in Mogadishu, let me start off with you because there are reports that some 6.2 million people in Somalia are facing starvation and that 363,000 acutely malnourished children are in need of critical nutritional support. The government in Somalia has declared this a national disaster. First of all, do give us an outlook of what exactly is going on in Somalia.
Thank you for inviting us to this program. The drought in Somalia has hit every part of the country, and it's a widespread drought. It has started back in 2015, and we had it in 16, and now in 2017 it has spread all over the country. It's very serious. The failure of the rains in the last 4 seasons, which is very, very serious scarcity of water that we have witnessed in all the parts of the country. That has led to the death of the assets of the people, the livestock. People have now lost a lot of animals, camels, cattle, sheep and goats. No animal was spared. We are witnessing now a very serious drought since 2011.
Right.
A lot of people compare this to the 1974, 73, 74. We see that people are really now abandoning their villages, flocking into the main villages and the towns.
Let me just jump in here and bring in Alhaji Jallo there, because Somalia is not the only one that is drought hit. Ethiopia as well is drought hit, and Kenya says about 4 million people will be food insecure by April. What is FAO's assessment, though, of the entire outlook for Africa in the Sahel and the East African region?
Yeah, well, in the East African region, I think the drought is obvious now. But I wanted to bring in the context of the origin of the drought, because there are 2 angles to it. You have the climate change issue that is so obvious to so many people now. But at the same time, there is the El Nino, La Nina effect. Now, this effect has spread from the Somalia case that has just been mentioned by my brother Abdi to Ethiopia that just mentioned, the southern part of Ethiopia and southeastern, with a large population that is affected. Now, northern Kenya and the coastal part is affected. Then you have southeastern South Sudan is affected, and northeastern Uganda. Now, these are areas that have become very dry. The drought has really devastated those areas, especially for agro-pastoralists who have lost livestock, and they have difficulties in moving around to find pastures. And
right.
Uganda has been receiving some of these people because Uganda seems to be better in terms of livestock feed.